Don't expect the sun to shine. By Richard E. Rathwell. Staged by Harold Rhenisch. You've written a book about Canadian poetry, especially the discipline of creative writing, centered around the wake of the poet Robin Blaser. As I read it, the book is the wake that came off poorly the first time around, but not just for Blaser, for Canada too. Why do you feel that Canada is a corpse?
Canada is a land of what you'd expect, made up of mainly immigrants and descendants of immigrants, with a history of genocide.
Okay, what's the memory trigger that connects all that? Most Canadians think in more linear ways. Pipelines, rail lines, hydroelectric transmission lines cut through Indian reservations, forests, ranches, and alpine valleys.
Mystifying addictive fake cultures.
You'll still lose readers. Canada is certainly real. The contemporary method of dealing with any gaps in understanding is to differentiate between settler culture and indigenous culture. Sometimes this gets confused and people talk of settlers or indigenous people instead. Often they talk of reconciliation. Care to try again?
Raising hysterical issues of terrors that can't be fixed in order to divert attention from core problems is translated into poems and emails.
Keep going.
Woke is white.
Whoops! Too much, too fast. Are you able to pull back a bit?
I get joy from the idle movement of a horse in a field of snow.
So do I. Joe Rosenblatt, wearing his poet's hat, pointed out that Canada is a chain of 10 big cities along the American border, surrounded by nowhere. Could it be that the citizens of this chain have more contact with images of horses than with horses themselves? So it makes no difference that physical experience leaps between the gym, traffic, and a screen, usually with team sports or a brutal murder that within 1 hour, sometimes two, dissects innocence into heavy drinking?
I am nothing.
It's time now to talk in our real language. I mean, as 21st century people. To translate poetry into a new language, one that can do something more than create individuals. In his blue notebook, for example, and that's a secret journal he kept in Berlin during the Second World War, the novelist and scriptwriter Erich Kästner made it clear to us all, and this was in 1943, 80 years ago, after the bombing of Hamburg and when the bombing of Berlin was beginning, that individuals, and he mentioned Renaissance men, the master race, were a bunch of horrific, thieving, petty, murderous thugs. Now, I know this is not how individuals are viewed in Canada or the USA today, among liberals anyway. But the point is, they were as modern as anything that is coming at us today. And just as modern as Hamlet in his court of conspiracies in 1601. It's been 400 years. It's time to move on. And here I've made a little presentation of our book, maybe as a demonstration, eh? There was that famous encounter in a seminar in Eastern Europe where Michael and Daci had spoken. as an erudite writer, lecturer, and internationalist Canadian on the nature of culture and his critique of that in the nationalists he had met. A poet with a wonderful name shouted at him and said, "How the fuck can you talk about that when you have never been in a war?" Ondaatje walked off the stage dramatically in opposition to such an incorrect idea. He is a Canadian, after all. I believe in him, and also in alien abduction. Here you go. So, that's a reading of the book, and a translation of book into the 21st century. It's a world in which truth has become a fiction. Now, I bet Richard's going to tell you that it's about Stalin murdering people and erasing them from photographs and journalists trying to hold back the tide. Don't expect the sun to shine is not Richard's first attempt to wrestle with the consequences. War and colonialism have cut the bond between images and literature everywhere. So finally, Richard got the idea that if he had a degree in creative writing, he would be able to change the culture from inside it. Personally, I was shocked. My God, I thought, they will eat him alive. Cambridge yet. One of the most conservative institutions in one of the most conservative cultures on earth. And creative writing's high-pressure world of peer pressure and ego creation? Worse yet, I'll have to hang around to sew him back together again. That's what I thought. So, Richard, how's that going?
Now, anybody watching this may require a Google or something to figure out what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about actually is creativity. I recently had some adjustments made, self-adjustments, in my lobotomy, which made it able for me to remember a number of things that have taken place in my past. And as a result, I have changed my mind on creativity. I used to think that within the paradigm of relative things, absolutes such as love and duty and poetry and creativity could be experienced. Now I realize that there are no such paradigms of limitations. There's actually nothing. So you're on your own as far as creativity goes, as was I. Now my first memory came, and they're not in any particular order, was with Sonny Terry and somebody McGee in a Rolls Royce, sitting in a parking lot, watching the logging going on a mountain opposite with dirigibles. The second memory that came to me was the memory of supplying arms to Zulu or ZANU PF, which was an underground organization. And I realized I'd done the same thing for the ANC by working on development projects and skimming the money from those, which took place in Nigeria, to the ANC in South Africa. Then the memories came on and on. Okay, so what I was doing, in fact, at those times, I did those things in what is called reality, was that I was imagining certain paradigms within which, limitations of which, were absolute, such as duty, right, wrong, justice, and so on.